seen colleagues here in the room want to raise some questions. First question in the back and then in the front.
Sesha Iyengar from Biocrop Science. I have a couple of questions. One is, do you have, for 8 hectares is used for orchard scenarios? You talked about 20 and 1. Is that incorporated into your model for?
Yes, we have seen when we look through all the possible tractor-mounted application types that the field application with the ground boom, tractor-mounted ground boom, gives you higher exposure. So that's the worst case for tractor-mounted. That's when you use solids. We just try to define a couple of worst-case scenarios so that you don't have to really handle all various possible applications. So the air blast, when you have a liquid product, and it's you can choose the worst case for the liquid. If it's indoors, you can, I don't know. Got a liquid product. Outdoors, this is the worst case. If you got a solid product, this scenario is the worst case. If you got a granule, as I said before, it's from exposure-wise, it's so close to the liquid that I would suggest using the liquid scenario as a surrogate.
Okay.
You had another question?
Yes, I did. We are proposing, if I got you right, Volker, that you do risk assessments for local effects, sensitization and irritation, which are transient effects. Why are we doing risk assessments for local effects?
It's just a requirement under REACH. It's if you identify hazards, and it might be, and I think for co-formants it's not too rare, that local effects are the most prominent ones. I mean, there might be irritating substances that they do nothing else but irritate your skin, or nothing else, I mean, it's still a major effect, but cause skin sensitization. So if you are in the lucky position to have enough quantitative data, you might be having a DNAL that's in milligrams per centimeter squared. If you have that, you use this one, and probably the general population DNAL will also be a mix per centimeter square at that. And you see that the exposure also then is expressed in milligrams per centimeter squared. That's because we know that the highest exposure is to the hands. All we need to have is convert the partition that makes up the hands and divide that by the hand surface. So that's a theoretical option. I have not seen too many local DNALs, in spite of me having really fiddled around with hundreds of substances now, but only if you have human patch test data, that sometimes you have dilution series and you really have an NOEL for skin irritation, but you know, how often do you have that? I don't think too often.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. So please hand over the microphone here at the first row.
Okay, thank you. Volker Koch, Clarion. This is a very nice and easy to use tool, but now it starts. How transparent is the tool? May I follow as a user what you are doing in behind? So which numbers you are multiplying, dividing, and so on, so that I can follow. The second one, with a so-called model outside the domain of the usual chemicals, like TRA uses and so on, you always will be asked how valid is that model? Yeah, can I apply it in the framework of REACH or not? And together with this question, I would ask if it would not be wiser if the pesticide companies would do this evaluation with models which are in their domain already, yeah? And the supplier give all the data you need for doing that. You know, if you go for a tier 1, so it's fine. You need not so many parameters, but later on, you need probably a refinement of application date. You need to know which of the PPE can be used in which surrounding. This is something which the normal supplier do not know. So,
Yeah,
thanks.
I think your points are valid, and that's why I mean the use of models which are totally new and are not, known by anybody and are top secret. This is to be avoided, and of course we didn't do that. This is I try to emphasize how the models, especially the German model, has been around for since the last millennium, and it has been used.
But then you should write on your model, this is based on this and that, you know? Or probably I have not seen it, yeah?
It is here. If you go to the model info, it tells you what it is, and I think can all be a reference. It's all published data. As I said, it has found widespread acceptance on EU level for 91414, and it's older than REACH, much older, and it's I think people and authorities are very much used to working with that model, and for the one application where we can't use a CP-specific model, we fall back to ECTOC TRA rather than using C-Tropex, which we are not allowed to disseminate freely. So I think we're pretty much on the safe side. We're not making anything up. We're using parameters that are in use for that domain. You go to the bystander, these are published data that are also used for authorizations. You go to the worker, this is based on EuroPOEM 2. All things done under sponsorship by authorities. So I think this is fulfills.
I believe you, but are the authorities believing us using that model? So probably we could do a little bit to make clear that this is nothing new, but coming from different models which are already used. So it would help.
So what you need is some sort of a letter of confirmation by ECHA. We have seen it all, and we do believe it, and please use this model if you like. I think, I might be wrong, but there's a letter or some sort of discussion going on with ECHA and the responsible folks there to familiarize them with this model and make them go like, look, this is what we have, and do you like it? And I think Kerry told us that they were not expecting too much detail. I think we're
I know, I was in the TRA working group, and I knew that there was a big debate about the worker and the consumer models with the different authorities. That's the reason why I'm asking, I don't want to get in trouble later on using that model and they reject it. And I know it from QSAS and everywhere. You have to really to describe it in detail so that you can use it.
I think, yeah, the models are so well described and so well established that a proper reference to these models
Exactly, that's the point.
should really do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the transparency? Can I really go to your cells and see what stuff you have combined or what?
There is, of course, in the background, there are a couple of sheets that you cannot see.
Yeah.
And I've thought about leaving them in for people to look at what's going on. It's not a trade secret or anything. I didn't make that up. There's no intellectual property whatsoever. It's published data. I don't know if there is agreement to unlock these sheets for read only. I don't have a problem with that.
That would be great.
In the past, sometimes knowledge can be power, but also it sometimes confuses people. They look at these tables and try to extract something from there that's not supposed to be extracted. It's just a couple of sheets that are in there that create new tables and have all the backbone of the models in there. But I could do that. I just don't know if more people want to know about it. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, well, so it seems that we are already in the Q&A session. And please feel free to ask questions to all three presenters. And Volker, do you want to join us here?
Sure.
Can unblock, of course. So Alan will be with us during this session, of course, and then during lunchtime in the afternoon he is somewhere else. What you told me? Back to the office. So okay, well, questions to all three presenters, if you wish.
Arend van Mazel, Dupont. Maybe just to follow up on the previous question, can we answer where we are in discussing this with ECHA and getting it accepted by ECHA?
We have been in communication with ECHA on the project and the tools. They were invited to participate today, but unfortunately Kevin Pollard was otherwise engaged today. We haven't specifically asked for their approval of the approaches that we're taking, essentially because they are existing models, as Volker has just described, and as you'll see this afternoon when Paul makes the presentation on the environmental part. And we did request to have a meeting with the Risk Assessment Committee, but they were fairly cool about interest. I don't think they see crop protection uses as being a particularly high priority. But I mean, if it's a general consensus, I guess, amongst the chemical industry and the crop protection industry that they would want to have specific approval of the approaches that we've developed, then I can't see any reason why we can't go back to Kevin Pollard with that message. I don't see any issues with approval of the tools that we've developed because there are existing approaches. Specifically, the one that Volker's presented, which is a common 91414 approach.
Okay, thank you. Carrie? More questions? Otherwise, I will fire off all my questions.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation so far. My name is Peter Jones from Syngenta. I have a question for Volker in particular. On one of your slides, you were talking about using subchronic studies for derivation for worker DNL. And is it acceptable to use a subacute, a subchronic DNL when you're deriving a DNL